just want to remind people of reasons to be optimistic and positive, and just focus this in as much of a forward-moving type of feeling, and just remind people of all the different options that they currently have in spite of all the stuff going on.
That's our focus. Just try to inspire and encourage.
Yeah.
Keep people moving forward.
That video that we posted earlier this week with Craig, ideally, hopefully inspiring everybody to make the most of this terrible situation that we're in, and get back to writing and find an outlet, a creative means. That was the 600th video we've added to our Pro Tips and Tricks page. That was a milestone.
Woo!
People piling in. We got hello from the Bay Area, East Coast, trying to stay healthy here in Massachusetts. Carlos says hi. It's Carlos from Pennsylvania. I love that we've got everybody coming in. Boston, Ontario, San Diego. What's good from the UK? Charlie, wow, you were up late.
Oregon and Washington.
Yeah.
Oregon, it didn't go anywhere.
Todd in New Orleans, another Bostonian.
Michaela from the
Oregon.
Oregon.
I love this. This is so cool just seeing where everybody's from.
Hello, Kylie from Trinidad. Oh, California.
Brooklyn, Culver City, Santa Monica.
Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
I'm from Chicago. And Scott is from Chicago.
Where's all my London friends?
Lives in Chicago.
Asleep.
Felicity's accent is Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, Molly, do you want to kind of introduce the whole thing here and get us?
Sure, it seems like everybody might know who we all are right now, but
yeah,
I'll do a little more formal of an announcement. I'm Molly. I'm the Director of Operations for the ISA. From Wisconsin originally, since we're talking about, hi Katie, since we're talking about where we're from. But I'm currently in Redondo Beach, where I reside. Should we all just go around and say who we are?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Who's next?
Yeah, okay.
Craig James, from originally from Chicago. Go ahead, Scott.
And you are the founder of the ISA.
Oh, that's right. I'm the founder of the ISA.
Details. Yeah, I'm Scott Marcus. I the business development manager. I do all the video work. So we've had South by Southwest and Tribeca fall through. So I'm home at a time when I'm usually not at home. But at least I'm in good company.
Yay.
It's good to see everybody.
Yeah, I'm Felicity Wren. I'm the Director of Development. I was born in Essex originally, which, to give you some context, is like Jersey Shore to New York, Essex to London. So I moved to London at a very early age, moved to LA 9 years ago. I'm the Director of Development. Screenwriters are my favorite. Woohoo! So I'm really glad that everyone's here. And let's do this. And I'm drinking a very large glass of Pinot Noir, and I already can't get my words right. So we're in trouble. That's all I'm saying.
She has her goblet at the ready. I guess I'll go. So yeah, I'm Max Tim. I'm the Director of Education with the ISA. Originally from where I am currently, Delavan, Wisconsin. It's a tiny little town of 7,000 people, made famous by the circuses in the mid to late 1800s. That is actually important because it's known as the circus capital of the country. Nobody actually cares, but I think it's kind of
We care.
Put you on the map.
For you.
Yeah, I am here now. I'm going to be probably here for a little while because I just happened to get sequestered out here in Wisconsin, but looking forward to getting back to Los Angeles. Yeah, that's about all I need to say now. Jaron, go for it.
Hey, I'm Jaron. I'm the creative executive at the ISA. Read a lot of scripts and help run the contests and help Felicity and everyone with the development slate. And I'm from San Pedro, here
And a big fan
in
of
LA.
Wow.
My parents live in Oregon now.
Oh, no. I'm Shayna Weber. I'm originally from Bend, Oregon. Didn't go anywhere.
And mess with the Oregonians. That's what Katie Bennett says.
We didn't go nowhere. Yay, Pacific Northwest. Hi, Anna. I moved to LA about 20 years ago. And now I'm in the valley in my little office, and I've locked my 3-year-old out of this room. So if you hear banging at all or screaming, that's
Max
where.
is the best.
Yes.
And so there are a few others who are not visible right now, but Carissa is on, and she is our, Carissa, what's your title? Marketing manager? I think you're the marketing and social media manager? Marketing manager, that's right. Danielle is our creative director, and Diane is our support, and who else? Jordan is our development assistant.
And then Beth, my wife.
Beth, of course.
Also a development assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And who else did I forget?
Reggie, you mentioned Reggie.
Oh, yeah.
And Reggie, also, he's the development coordinator.
Out in London.
He's in London as well. Thanks everybody for coming on tonight. We really appreciate that you're here. I know this is a little different for us, obviously. We are used to doing this live in person in about 20 cities around the globe. LA's been going for 6 years now, and it's always been a fantastic experience. Really great way to bring the communities together. And now that we're in so many other cities, this is, I think, probably the first time that we've all been on a platform together. So this is very cool. I love that we're globally bringing the community together in a way that we never have before. It's a nice little perk of the situation that we're going through right now. And I'm going to hand it over to Craig for some more words.
Hey, well, thank you, Molly. I just want to say a couple quick things about how this is actually turning out to be cooler than I was expecting it to be. Just seeing everybody from the different cities around the world is exciting. And one of the things that, we keep hearing this social distancing these days everywhere. But I don't think disconnecting socially is a good thing. And I think people are misinterpreting social distancing. Yeah, we have to be careful, but we shouldn't be disconnecting. And I think that's what's exciting about this call is here we are together as a community, which is what Third Thursdays is and how it started, expanding from a small group of people in Los Angeles to now upwards of 22 cities and more that we were going to be growing into. But as I said, this is an alternative temporarily while we're having to keep some distance. But as a screenwriter, I think it's so critical to make sure that you're constantly connecting to as many people as you can. And because we can't do it at our Third Thursday events, here's an opportunity to see some of us, to know who you're reaching out to or talking to via email, and hopefully connect to. Who knows what the future is bringing us right now. But I think the thing that we need to keep reminding ourselves is that networking aspect is important to getting your career launched and your screenplay sold, building as many friendships as you possibly can. On a personal note, today I reached out to a couple friends. So it was nice to just hear their voices and connect with them. So I would keep encouraging that, because I think even from that, there's going to be some great stories of us, some old friends I hadn't talked to in a while that reminded me of some things, some of the goofy things we did either in college or after college or when we were working together that I can use in my writing, since I'm going to have obviously a little bit more time to spend on the craft. And so it's just part of the ISA's mission has always been to encourage you to keep getting better as a writer. We have a lot of free resources on our site that are available to help you do that. And since you are likely to have more time, I would encourage you again to just get onto the site, look at our articles and advice and our podcast page and our pro tips. Feel free to reach out to us if you have questions about anything associated with the screenwriting and the film world. We don't know it all. We don't know where it's going, but we're here to support you in any kind of way that we can. And please, if you can afford it, upgrade to ISA Connect. It's there's a lot of people don't really understand what it is, unfortunately, but it is a great next level of connecting to the industry, submitting to writing gigs, which we look at, and are, you'll see that on some of them it says ISA verified producer. That's us looking on behalf of some producers who are big studio producers who we can't just disclose who they are. but they're looking for content, and they're going to be reading a lot of content over the next month or so, or who knows how long we're going to be kind of isolated. So now's a good time to be getting your work into people's hands, but simultaneously making sure that your work is ready. That's one thing that we always want to make clear is don't get your work out there until you're 100% sure that it's ready. And while we've got some time, reach out to some friends that are in the industry, submit your scripts, and join a writers group if you can, at least virtually. Share scripts, give each other notes. Reach out to us if you need to. We're going to be cutting down the cost of our notes this coming month, just to make it a little bit easier on everybody. Our development evaluations are going to be a lot less expensive. So we're going to try to do our best to contribute to what are probably going to be difficult times financially to people. And but the biggest and most important thing is to know that we are here. I said this in the video the other day, that we love you. We're here to support you. We want the best for you, and keep doing what you can to just get better as a writer, because it's a critical aspect of breaking in, is to make sure that your work is at the highest level. So practice your pitches, practice your rewriting your log lines, your synopses. I always hate that word. And do your best to just make sure your script's at its best. So I'll pass it on back to Max. But again, if you need us, please email us at support@networkisa.org. And if you need to reach out to me, feel free to hit me up at craig@networkisa.org. We're all here for you.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks, Greg. I do want to comment on worst Brady Bunch remake ever. Little comment in there. This is the first time we're doing this Zoom webinar. I think it's kind of fun, and this is another example of how we're just trying to just use this in the most optimistic way possible. What can we do to continue to reach out to our members and keep you informed, but also teach and educate and allow everybody to ask questions. That's ultimately what Craig's message is that nothing's really going to stop. Momentum is going to carry us forward. No matter what, the industry is going to continue. It's at a slowdown now. We don't know for how long, but that doesn't mean you're writing or the opportunity to focus on your craft and educate yourself, study, watch a ton of shows, and don't just be a passive viewer. There is still opportunity here in spite of everything that's going on. We just got to stay as positive as possible. But yeah, Molly, do you want to add to that? Felicity, Jaron, Shayna, anybody? Scott, if you want to just kind of add commentary here.
I'd love to add something quickly, and that's just a small thing. And Carissa, our social media person, lovely social media person, she has been asking all of you to post log lines for your latest stuff. And just to let you guys, there's a lot been posted, and I read them. We look at them, and that's just a small thing you guys can do. We're all writing by ourselves all the time anyway. This is a great opportunity we write for other people to read. So if you just finish something, or you just want to kind of put something out there, go on there. That's a great first step. Just go to the Twitter page, put up a log line. I love looking at that stuff. It kind of knocks me back all the time. I go on there and like, wow, that's a great idea. Oh, wow, there's another amazing idea. So yeah, keep doing that. We just want to inspire everyone to just keep communicating, keep getting their stuff out there.
What are you going to do? You just got to keep fighting, keep pushing, do what you can to survive. And in the meantime, if we are writers, but we're not writing, are we writers? So I think that's why that's definitely why we're doing these virtual Third Thursdays. I did an ISA Connect webinar it's free to Connect members. We did that yesterday on Zoom. I have a Story Farm workshop that some of my writers take part in on the weekends. We have development evaluations, and you can get notes. There are so many different consultants, and even if you can't afford to pay for those notes or to pay for support, now we have these options online to be able to just keep in touch with writing groups. You can still send material across. You can still give notes. You can still just work with people and support people. And if there is any time to need to support others, and vice versa, now's the time. So here we go. We're going to probably be in this for the long haul. We might as well take advantage of it.
Everybody, please welcome David Yarovesky. Some friends know him as Yarvo. It's very hard for me to say his full name because I've always known him as Yarvo. Man, I feel like I've known you for almost 20 years. You were kind of like, Yeah, you were kind of like in that group when I first moved to LA and we started making friends, and everyone was, you know, starting off at zero basically. Yarvo was one of those people that was always working his ass off. Sorry to say ass, but he was always working very hard and was just super creative. And back then I remember I wasn't even writing. I was just wanting to get into production and producing, and I didn't even know what I wanted to do. And Dave was always like on this path. He was just like going. He knew what he wanted to do. And that was just so admirable, honestly. So yeah, I've just known for a long time, and watching him go up through what he's been doing. And he made a movie called The Hive, which was amazing. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's kind of about what's happening now, so weirdly. And yeah, and then he just directed Brightburn, which is huge, amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
So great. So thank you, David Yarovesky, Yarvo, whatever. Thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it.
By the way, if you're looking for like hope and optimism, maybe The Hive isn't the movie to go watch. But yeah, I have been watching the news and feeling like strangely nostalgic for the days of writing and shooting The Hive. It's for those of you who haven't seen it, which I'm sure it's basically all of you. It's a movie about like a contagious virus that connects us all on a you know, like a hive mind sort of possession thing. And yeah, it's pretty gnarly. Although that disease transmits from vomiting into someone's mouth and not.
Thank God.
Also a really great, smart film. It's not just like, people are barfing in each other's mouths. It's It's really well done. You did a good job on a small budget, and it's not dumb. Like it actually has a smart through line through it, and it makes sense. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, we tried that movie. We had no money and just an endless amount of ambition. So the goal was to err on the side of ambition. I think we did. If you see the movie, there's a lot of ambition, and some of the things definitely work. What was the budget of I mean, can I can just answer these, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, Max, just to remind everybody that we will open it up for a little Q&A, right? To people who raise hands and ask questions.
Dave, if you see a question that you want to jump on.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just tell you, it was $500,000. It was $500,000. And, you know, when you make a movie for something like that, it means that, like, you're doing everything. You know what I mean? I mean, you're doing literally everything. And the money that you have is, like, for the things that you cannot beg your way into, you know. There's no budget per se. I mean, there's a budget, but it's really like, I think we can maybe get someone to do this for $100, you know. I mean, that's what it is. And especially
that translates to anyone making any project, whatever your budget is. You're kind of like, oh, maybe we can get this person to do this, and
this
maybe
is kind of in reference
just on a larger scale.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. But I think the difference is like when you're making a movie for $500,000, or under, because I'm sure there's people in here who have done that, you know, or are about to. There's a constant sense of like, if you at all finish your day, if this movie makes any sort of sense, if anything about this works at all, that's a huge victory, because like this could just crumble in the way that like Brightburn, like I'm surrounded by producers, you know, Simon Hatt, who was next to me all the time when I was making this movie, you know, he's off producing Suicide Squad now. Like he knows what it takes to make a movie. You're surrounded by people and systems and you know, AD structures and things like that you just don't have when you're working for that little money. It is as run and gun as possible. There's a day where I literally grabbed the cinematographer and I was like, the crew is slowing us down. When everyone goes to lunch, you and me are going to grab the camera. We're going to run off with the actors and we're going to go shoot the climax of the movie, because we weren't going to get a climax to the movie if we didn't do that. I mean, that's what filmmaking is at that budget level.
And sometimes even above that budget level. I mean, you got to just kind of improvise on the spot every now and then, I assume. I mean, obviously you're going to have a lot more time and organization with a much higher budget. Brightburn, did you have those experiences of it being sometimes incredibly unorganized?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I think with any movie, there's a sense of managing chaos, right? And different degrees, right? So the higher up you go, the more opportunity you have for like all these people to be planning, right? But at the same time, you have all this opportunity for producers and people who have influence on the movie in terms of money or creative influence, whatever it is, to have an idea that forces the entire machine to have to crank and move in a different direction that's sort of unexpected. And that can be just as chaotic. But I mean, all that being said, you know, making a movie like The Hive is in some ways just so much harder because it is all on you. You know, there was a, you know, the movie's all about like black goop and stuff, and so like there's this like credit sequence in the movie, and had no idea how to make credit sequence, and so I started talking about like, you know, I just want like black goo, like I want like cool looking black goo and stuff, and so in order to do it, I started going on YouTube and watching videos about how in 3D Max to render liquid simulations, like how to create that stuff, right? It's pretty advanced CGI, and I know very little to nothing about CGI. I mean, I have a tech mind. I understand technology, but I've never done any CGI or anything. And I'm sitting there spending 2 weeks training myself how to do this stuff. And it ended up being that we just made goo and put it in a like a baking pan and shot it under a macro lens on my dad owns a dental company, and so he has a vibrating plate that does this at incredibly high speeds. And so we put the pan on the plate, and the liquid would separate in weird, you know, ways, and that's the titles, you know, and that's what it is.
Well, I mean, I think the level of immediacy obviously is quite a bit different when directing compared to writing. You have, you know, in some cases, most cases, you don't have a deadline when you're writing. You're just kind of making this up. So what did you always know that you wanted to be a director? Or were you just starting, you know, meaning I want to write, or were you directing first and you thought, no, I'm also a writer because I can do this? Because a lot of people watching have no aspirations to be a director. They just want to get the writers, you know, the scripts made, projects out there in front of people. So where, you know, what's the overlap there? Do you see your writer self coming out when you're on set, or do you see yourself as the director when you're writing?
Well, to be honest, I've never seen a difference. Like, that's not true. As an adult, I see a difference, right? But growing up, when I was teaching myself how to make movies as a kid, there was literally no difference between writing and directing. The way I made something was I spent a few weeks writing something, and then I went and shot it, and then I cut it, and then it was done. And the funny thing about all that was I was only doing that because I wanted to be a makeup effects artist. And so I was doing all that stuff so that I could do weird makeup effects. And I, I mean, this is a whole long story. I'm not even gonna bother to tell it, but I ended up on a phone call as a 15-year-old kid with Dick Smith. If anyone's in here, they don't know who that is. He's like a legendary makeup artist. You know, he trained Rick Baker, and I mean, he did like The Exorcist, right? And so I ended up on a call with him, and he was like, "Why do you want to be a makeup artist?" And I said, "Because, you know, I want to shoot. I like planning the shot, and I like cutting it." And he's like, "No, man. Like if you want to be a makeup artist, then if you said to me, I like to sculpt and I like to paint, I'd say, okay, great, you'd be a great makeup artist. But you said you want to cut and you want to do this." He's like, you're a filmmaker. So to answer your question, I left there going, oh, okay, I'm a filmmaker, but those things never combined in my mind, right? But as I'm out in the world working, and I'm working with writers, and I'm I wrote and directed my first film. I only directed Brightburn. I didn't write it. I worked with writers. I found that there's a greater understanding of the relationship between the two developing. And I actually think that Brightburn was a pretty good example of how those things can merge, you know, and how those things can converge. I'll give you an example. you know, when we started working on the script, James, Mark and Brian are the writer, James Gunn's the producer, Brian is his brother, Mark's his cousin, so they're a family unit, right?
Mhm.
And we all got in the room, the four of us, and went back to the cards. So we're putting cards on a wall and and working through it. And there was a kind of system in place where, so we as a team would like sort of break the spine of the story. Brian and Mark would go write the story or rewrite the story, because when we came on board, they had the script already. But then that I would go and work with a storyboard artist, and I would dig in on the horror, and I would go in and, like, you know, for example, the car scene, or the eyeball scene, or whichever scene, and I would just start working with the storyboard artist and breaking those out, right? So, and allowing those sequences to sort of, I don't want to say be written on the page, because there were pieces of it before, but to just start directing action, to start to deal with them as set pieces, as like horror action set pieces essentially, and start breaking them out, and then sending those to writers for them to interpret, you know. So there was this sort of back and forth, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a lot of writers who have just been commenting while you've been chatting that they have the intention of being a writer-director. There's been some comments, or have been some comments, about how understanding the production process is going to help you in the writing process, because that writing process is the setup for production later. What can writers do? Like, at this point, with Brightburns, the script came to you, you looked at it, and you were like, yeah, cool, I want to do this, you know, I'm assuming. So from that point, you know, I'm assuming that the script was visual enough for you to understand how you can do it. So what can writers do to help and support a director? Meaning, a lot of the writers who have not produced anything, or they haven't sold a project, they haven't directed something, they're never reeled, they need somebody else to make it for them. What can they do to support you? Meaning, how do I convince a director to take this on?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll tell you, this was a unique one, right? Because I got this script because I knew Brian and Mark, but they had a director on board. I don't even know who it is, but they had a director, and they were going out with it. And I went to them after it just didn't work, you know, like they didn't get the green light. They weren't getting interest. I read it, and I said, I think I know why you guys are having a problem getting this movie made. It has nothing to do with the people that you're in business with. It has to do with the fact that like what this movie could be versus what this movie is on the page today. I'm reading the script, and I think it came from a sense of like, they're like, we just want to get the movie made, and so like, let's not blow up the budget. Let's not think too big. Let's keep it small so we can actually finance it. And I think that might have worked against them potentially, because you look at it and you go, holy crap, this is like an evil superhero movie, right? But the version that I read didn't have him smashing through walls or melting faces, or it didn't go there. And the movie that I wanted to see when I read it was, okay, this is like pure wish fulfillment. This is me this is me like at 10 years old, sitting, at school in a playground, arguing with my friend. If Batman and Superman got into a fist fight, what would happen? Or if Freddy Krueger and Batman fought, who would win? And playing that out in the most grounded, real way possible. And so to me, I was like, if you're going to give someone superpowers, I want to see them turn it on us in the biggest and in the worst ways. And so I went to them with that, and I said, this movie sells itself. And when we had our conversation, the conversation was me telling them what I thought the trailer was. I said, I think the trailer to this movie is a fucked up version of like a Man of Steel trailer, where you're like hearing this a parent who believes that their child is special and that they're unique, and you think you're watching something about a superhero that's going to help us. And as we get further and further along into the trailer, you realize that while she thinks that, that's not the case, that he's bad. And that the trailer gets darker and darker and darker. And I started to walk him through some of the beats. And then I got to the end of it and I said, the problem is that there's a lot of pieces in that trailer I just described to you that don't exist in this movie. And that's the movie that we should be making. And so
I have a question for that.
Yeah.
Do you think that writers who write thinking about keeping it simple versus just putting what you want on the page and exploding it, you know, and making it huge, what do you think about, I mean, because we're always told like, oh, think about your budget, but also ultimately, I think the best choice is just to write what you want to write, like write the story you want to write and not think about, oh, this is going to cost too much or this is not doable.
Yeah. I mean, within reason, you know, I have a friend who wrote a very big spec script that went around and did incredible things for him on the Blacklist and stuff. And the thing I'm always like, why didn't that movie get made? And he always tells me it didn't get made because the budget was too massive. It'd be like 250 million, you know, it'd be like an Avatar, you know? Right. I mean, within reason, but I mean, I think the real answer to your question is probably that when someone writes a story, they often think of cool things they want to do, or they think of like, you know, they think of it in a way, but they don't think of like, what is this movie? Like, what is the macro of this movie? You know, I read a lot of scripts. People send me a lot of horror movies, right? And I'll give you an example. A few months ago, I was sent this script that was incredibly well written. The horror was great. Like, it was just like someone who really understood the genre of horror. They knew how to write it. They built anticipation, made it incredibly exciting. But there was nothing unique about the like macro of the story. There was nothing. It was like, why make this movie? You know, they've clearly spent a lot of time, and someone will make the movie. Someone will make the movie. But for me, it didn't excite me in the way that the big picture, what is this, and what is the movie? So I think that oftentimes people spend a lot of time, and I've done it. I mean, I've written 7 or 8 like features, you know, and there's a couple of mine that I can name where I'm like, the big picture of what this movie isn't that exciting. Like, this sequence is really cool. This moment's really cool. This stuff's really cool. But what does it all add up to? What's the macro? What is the movie, you know?
So
and at
Anna,
the end of the
Anna, to go to Anna's comment, that's what David means. The macro is what's the point of it from a message standpoint, from an experience standpoint, from an audience experience level. And I think a lot of what you're saying, David, is so spot on, because writers need to be thinking from that level of, first question being, has anyone ever seen this before? Yeah. And that's technically what was quote unquote wrong with that script that you read, that the writing was incredible. The writer obviously had craft down pat, knew the genre, etc. But then it was this level of, I'm not connecting because I've seen it before, or there isn't a larger message here. And that's where the industry is going in TV and features, because so many, that's why, you know, those genre type of movies, meaning, you know, very specific genres, you know, romantic comedy, horror, science fiction, you know, things that are, you have mass, you know, cult following. There have been so many done, and there have been so many done well, that you have to try to top it. You have to do something different. You can't just go along the lines of what everybody else has done before, because the goal for a writer, whether you want to be a writer / director or not, you have to get somebody like David interested because they haven't seen something like this before, but it still feels familiar. I'm assuming, I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, but I should add a caveat, because I see what people are saying in the chat thread, and I actually agree with them. Because the perspective I'm coming from it is from a director, right? It, like, I read something and I'm like, do I want to spend the next 2 years killing myself and investing blood and sweat and tears and time, right? Time away from my wife, time away from my life, my friends. Do I want to give all of that to this story, right? Does it creatively speak to me? And so that's how I read things. Now, there are plenty of people and writers who have had an incredibly successful career writing the thing that people want to see, or the cheap thing, and I'm not criticizing that at all. That is like, or they're, you know, they see a haunted house movie and they're like, I want to write another haunted house movie, and then go write that haunted house movie, and that's cool. But for what I'm speaking to is when it gets sent to a director, you know, and the director reads it, I'm reading it from the perspective of like, am I gonna kill myself? Am I gonna walk through the fire to make this story? You know what I mean? And so it, to me, it has to speak to me on that level. Now, here's the funny thing about it, and this has been true many times with scripts I've responded to. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have like there have been scripts that I've responded to on a macro level, and then there's a couple things that I really like, but know that I can get it to the place that it needs to be. But the thing is, what is the movie? If the movie's a great idea, then I'm totally like excited about it. And if it isn't, then I don't care how well written it is. Like at the end of the day, it's only going to be so good, you know?
Yeah, you want something to work with, really dig your hands into. And Jaron can speak to that. Jaron just recently finished a horror feature, and he's, you know, in terms of time commitment and blood, sweat, and tears, and is it worth it to really dive in? You have to be confident enough to be able to say yes before you start, because I mean, Jaron went through it like the ringer. Right, Jaron?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was like Dave's first movie. It was like the under $500,000 thing, but you know, we wrote that too, and a lot of that we shot in Utah, so there was a big difference there because we got a lot of crew and stuff. That, you know, what Dave was explaining about, you have to do everything. There is a level of that, but shooting in Utah, we actually got a lot of that stuff. I didn't have to do everything, which was kind of nice. But
Great.
But I think Ira was just asking, to speak to this point, I wanted to say something. Ira was just asking about originality versus, you know, targeting an audience or playing into cliches, basically. And I think I started out in the same way, where it's just like, well, people say they want something different, so you got to write something really different. And what people really mean is they want something the same, but with a twist. And so it's just, I think what Dave is explaining too is just having that twist where you can go, I know how to make this. This is a horror movie, or this is this kind of movie, but there's enough of a twist there that that can get people excited again. From the director onto the audience.
Litz has just said, I think people want to be surprised. They do want to be surprised, but they also want to know, because it's kind of the same in a micro level, if we're talking about macro, micro, compared to what David is saying is, do I want to spend the rest of, 2 years of my life focused on this? Audience members are kind of asking the same thing. Do I want to spend the next 2 hours focused on this? 2 hours even is something that's worthwhile. And that's riding on, the shoulders of the writer and the director and all the actors and the producers and everybody. So, this isn't a trade that we want to get into lightly, because once you put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, you want to be confident enough that you're able to deliver something that is workable for someone like David, somebody like Jaron, any director to take it on and go, yeah, I can see what is working in terms of a level of hook, and it's a concept that we haven't really seen before. It's a different version of something. The writing itself obviously it needs to be more than just passable, right, David? I mean, you're going to be turned off if you're reading something that just isn't well written.
Oh no, listen, 100%. Yeah, if the writing sucks, the writing sucks, and also exactly what you said is true, right? Like what I'm not trying to say is like, I need to read the most original, most different thing on the planet. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I need to know like what the movie is, not just that there's a plot point, but like, what is the human primal entry into this, and what are we talking, like, what are we saying, and what does it mean? Like, what does it mean? And then if that pulls me in, that pulls me in, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But to me, I always have this kind of confidence that if I love the bones of something, if I love conceptually what this can be, then I'm in. And if I don't, it doesn't matter how well written or not well written it is. It's not the thing that I'm going to kill for. But you're exactly right. It's something with it's what's a different take on something you kind of you've seen before to a certain extent.
Hey Dave, let's go back. Let's go back in time to when you first sort of started. So will you talk a little bit about, I know you wrote and directed The Hive, but how did you get to a place for writers who do want to maybe direct or are thinking of ways to become a filmmaker beyond just writing, you know, the story or the script? What, you know, just kind of briefly talk about how you got to where you're at now, and then any advice that you have for writers maybe wanting to delve into directing or you know, or producing or any sort of thing outside of just writing the script.
Yeah, I would say, and you know, I'd say that there's literally only one way, or at least, I don't know, maybe there's more ways. The way that I got in and the way that people I know got in are people who just had to keep making things. I mean, you've known me now for about 20 years, I suppose. And when you met me, I was making things. And I made my first movie 5 years ago. You know, so you think about that, that's 15 years of me not making movies. Now, that being said, listen, I had a long career making music videos and commercials, but you know, it was still, you know, I always wanted to make films. And so it never felt like, oh, I'm here. It always felt like, okay, you know, I'm going to do this video. It's going to pay my rent, but like, when am I going to get to make this movie? You know? So to me, it's always been this climb, you know? And listen, I often look back and think, hey man, maybe if you just went to AFI or if you went to NYU, I consider going to NYU. I want to go to CalArts. I want to go to all those places. Maybe if I just did that, I could have got there faster. But over the course of the 15 years, I learned so much about the craft of filmmaking, about writing, about the technical side of filmmaking, the technical side of writing. Like, I learned so much about that stuff that when I look back and think, you know, I almost made a movie when I was like 24. I sold the script to a company and it looked like it was going to get greenlit, and then, you know, and then it took me another 11 years to actually make the movie, to make a movie. It wasn't that movie. But I think back to me at 24, who was just like, I need to make this movie. Like, this is going to change my life if it doesn't happen. And after making The Hive, which would have been a kind of similar situation, I think everything in the world that movie didn't happen because it would have sucked. I was not ready. I thought I was ready. I was not ready. And I had no concept of how not ready I was.
And that's tricky because nobody really knows when they're ready. You think you're ready, you know, so you just have to kind of jump in. I feel, David, that had you jumped in with a different project, you probably would have found out I'm maybe close to ready, or the timing. That's one thing, and I say it a lot in the webinars that we have, but I brought in a writer that was writing on the Goldbergs at the time. I think it's on a different show, but he said that the one thing that we can't control is our timeline. When something is supposed to happen, when our career is supposed to begin, we have no control over that, really. And so what you're talking about is kind of in reference to an answer that Kylie is asking in the Q&A portion of the section here. You may not be able to see it, David, but she's saying, I'm currently a film student and write every day, which I know is vital. What other advice would you give to set yourself up for success in the future? And Jim is saying, any tips for a first-time feature filmmaker? They kind of fall on the same level. And it's a lot of what you're saying. You were focused on education, even though you weren't necessarily coming from that level of attention, meaning I have to educate myself. You were just educating yourself.
Yes, exactly. I mean, listen, there was an aspect, like I came into it going, I want to know everything, you know, but I would have much rather just been handed a movie when I was 24 and then just gone on and learned it that way. But I wanted to know literally everything. And like, yes, like in terms of writing, you know, I once heard an expression that the best writer in LA is serving your drink or whatever. And the point of that is because no one finishes anything, and no one, and even when they do, they don't send it out. It's like all this like self-sabotage. I mean, and I didn't see what you wrote in the chat thread, so I don't know what specifically you're saying, but it's not just about writing. It's about writing and then finishing and sending and getting your ass handed to you and feeling horrible about it and then doing better the next time. You know, I'll tell you, there's nothing more exciting and terrifying and miserable then you write something. And I do this all the time, and I encourage everyone to do this. You could throw a rock and hit 5 actors in LA. So write something, grab those actors, and sit around a table and have them read it out. And then talk about it afterwards. And make it a safe space. Do not, like, don't judge people. Like, really hear what people have to say. Oftentimes, their ideas are terrible, but the area they're talking about is true. Like, they'll have some terrible idea for your second act, or like, you know, this piece right here. Okay, you don't need to take their idea, but you need to acknowledge that 3 people have focused on this chunk of your movie not working. Why is that, you know? And
yeah, it's not necessarily about the specific note or the way that they would do it. It's that this doesn't make sense. This doesn't track. So you got to fix this, because we're all telling you that it's not working.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. They are being, as brutal as they might be, they are being kinder than any test audience on the planet. I'm telling you, we did multiple rounds of testing with Brightburn. The first time we tested Brightburn, someone in the audience who I know, because we did a friends and family kind of test, a good friend of mine, smart person, raised their hand. They were like, oh, I thought he was going to be a B at the end of the movie. I was surprised that he didn't turn into a B. And it was because in the beginning of the movie, there's a scene in class, and the teacher's talking about bees, and they're learning about bees. And so from that moment on, in her head, she was like, bees. And so and those kind of things, like what we found was, so that was the first test. The second test, that was to 20 people. I was like, okay, that's an outlier. We play it for 500 people, and 10 people were like, hey, how come he's not a bee? What do you mean? So, you know, these people who are trying to help you, and they're giving you a critique, they're giving you the nicest possible critique you will ever hear. So hear them, hear their words, and take them.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I think we're running up kind of against our time here, David, but I mean, we've had so many great comments, and I'm loving what everybody's saying, because we're all in this together. We're all trying to create something, to deliver something in terms of a form of entertainment. And I think ultimately what we're coming back around to most often in this conversation is this is such an experiential level of education. Like, you can listen to lectures all day long, but unless you're actually doing it, and then, like you said, putting the work out there and getting killed, getting notes back, trying to rewrite, you're not really going to learn. It's kind of like what did Michael Jordan said, you know, if you shoot a free throw the wrong way for 10,000 hours, you're just going to learn how to do it the wrong way, and you're never going to make a basket. So you have to continually improve, and that's what education is. You know, you're going to get better after Brightburn. After the next movie you make, you're going to improve. You're going to find out things that are always kind of holding you back, and then you improve a little bit more. So it's all experiential. You can go to all the schooling and take all the classes you want, but if you're not actually doing it.
I had a conversation with James in post. We were sitting talking one day, and I was like, man, I feel like my forehead is expanding. I've learned so much in the process of making this movie. You know, I wish I could go back and like reshoot the whole movie now, knowing everything I know. You know, I've just learned so much. And he said to me, he feels that way after every movie that he shoots, that he learns so much. And I think that's true of everything. When I'm writing something right now, right? And when I write, when I have downtime, I throw on like YouTube videos talking about, you know, structure or a character arc, or why this movie's character arc worked, or why this one didn't. You know, I've been having a ton of meetings, well, before all this, ton of meetings where I'd have to drive all the way out to here or there. And in my car, I'd have an audiobook, like one of these, you know, writing audiobooks. I mean, you think you know, but you don't, you know, you always be learning, always be teaching yourself and improving. That is what I try to do. And I'm always, there's no better moment than when you hear something new, and you learn something, and it just expands the way you're thinking about things, and it recontextualizes old scripts you wrote or old movies you made or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally. Well, Shana, do we want to just thank your 20-year friend here for joining us? Thanks for bringing him
I
in.
should tell a funny story about.
Yeah,
Yarvo.
please.
So I remember the party that we were at that Dave decided he had a friend crush on James Gunn. And we were inside, and I believe we were playing some sort of video game or karaoke or some stupid thing. And
Was it
James Gunn
poker?
was,
Was it
I
when
think
the night I met him when he stepped in the dog poop?
yes, yes.
Oh my God, that was the night I met him. Yeah.
And he was outside on the patio, and you were inside, and you were like, man, that guy's awesome. And all of us were like, who? Like, what? And you're like, I'm going to be friends with that guy because that, I just remember you having this moment where you're like, I'm about to friend date this guy. And you went on the patio and we didn't see you again. And that was it. I remember that. Yeah.
That's funny. The funny thing about it is like James now has, you know, he is like a titan of this industry, right? But the thing about him is like when I met him, he was making Xbox shorts, you know, and he was making Spike TV, like he was making these tiny things. And that sort of speaks to exactly what I'm saying. Like this industry is that it's this, you know, but he had a drive within him to always keep making things. I had a drive within me to always keep making things. I've seen people go from the person who everyone's like, sure, or whatever, to the person who everyone is begging to take the meeting with and to read their thing. So like, you know, it's a lesson to everyone out there to like, you know, first of all, treat everyone well, but also like get out of your mind about it. Make stuff, make good stuff.
Yeah.
Make good stuff.
I remember that story because we didn't really we knew who he was, but he wasn't James Gunn like that he is.
No.
And you didn't think that either. You were just like, I like what he's done. And you were just like, that's somebody that I want to be friends with just on a creative level. I'm not talking about like you were like going like, ooh, I'm gonna be friends with a guy. It was more of a creative thing. And it was this really fun moment. And then you went out there and then we never saw you again. It was just like, okay, we're best friends now. And you were like, we'd peek out the window and you guys were like chatting. It was really funny.
Yeah, we totally hit it off in this crazy way. Yeah.
It was crazy.
That is funny. No, listen, I grew up my whole life. Like I went to this camp where like it's funny because a lot of the camp stories in the Hive, which takes place in summer camp, were kind of inspired by my camp experience. But I went to this camp and it was a creative camp, so I was constantly surrounded by creatives, and I understood in that moment the value of surrounding yourself with people who are always challenging your mind and who are creative in different avenues, not just what you do, but in multiple ways. Like some of my best friends would just sit around with acoustic guitar and sing songs or whatever, and finding yourself. So anyways, to make a long story short, yeah, when I met James and when I met you, when I met a lot of our circle there, you know, you all felt like intensely creative people. And I was at a time in my life where I felt like cut off from creativity, like, you know, and so when I met all of you, I was like, wow, here's a creative bunch of people who are doing all kinds of things. So the message, I guess, to people in here, and I guess you can't really do it at this time, but you can virtually, which is find creative people that you gel with and make things together, you know. That's all it is. Like, you know, someone said to me once, you know, everyone out here in Hollywood, you have something in common with them. And the thing that you have in common with them is that you guys love movies, because there's better ways to make money. There's better ways to have a career. There's safer ways to do all that stuff. The only reason anyone is here doing this is because they love movies. If you can't bond on that, then something's wrong with them, because they should be here because they love movies.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on board to do this.
Yeah.
You're awesome. And now I want to hang out with you once this is over. Can we hang out in person?
Yes, I would.
David, we
literally love that.
We have some questions in the Q&A portion. Do you have a little time to answer some questions?
Of course. Yes, let's do some questions. It sounds a lot of fun.
But yes, of course, and thank you for being here, David. But
actually, to be honest with you, this has been kind of great. You know, the last couple of days, you can just like spiral out and lose sight of life. And so just the exercise of talking about being creative and doing things is, I think, helpful to hopefully all of our brains.
We're gonna do this for as long as we need to, and you know, whether we're live in person in Los Angeles or any of the other cities, or if we're just gonna go virtually. I mean, I think this is it's one of those experiences where we've never done the virtual Third Thursday. Maybe we're gonna do this more often on, you know, the second Tuesday. You know, maybe we'll create a new event. I don't know. I think this is a nice little test, but. Okay, so Jim is asking, and I'll just read this out. Brightburn, much like Joker, is a superhero movie that instead focuses on, and dare I say, glorifies the villain instead of the hero. What do you think is driving this trend, and do you think superheroes still have a place as the main character in non-Marvel or DC Comics movies, or should it instead be on the ordinary people such as Brandon's parents?
Okay, so that's an interesting question, right? And I actually see that a lot on Twitter and stuff. Our movie gets brought up alongside Joker and movies that sort of glorify violence, right? And this is what I would say to that. Number one, the funny thing about Brightburn, right, is that when we made the movie, we said we're telling Tori's story. And so from a macro perspective, we made a movie that was all about Tori's experience. And so the idea was that he would be an alien and that you would always be afraid of him. And then what happened was we tested the movie. And the audience just wanted more and more of Brandon. They wanted to understand more about Brandon's character. And so if you watch the movie from a really analytical eye, what you'll see is that the first half of the movie has become Brandon's story, right? Like you see him make a change. You see him like essentially. What I started saying is the movie's homeland, in the sense that, you know, he's here and he's living an Earth life and he represents Earth. But then this voice from somewhere else comes and starts persuading him to come over to the other side. But the moment he comes to the other side, the moment the movie becomes that when he turns dark, it is not his movie anymore. It is now Tori's movie. And we're telling the story from a perspective of someone who's very scared of Brandon. So I don't actually think that we're doing the thing that they're saying, but I do want to say something else that I understand, right? When I grew up, I loved slasher movies. I love movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and all those movies and those movies received the same critique because parents would walk in and they would see kids like cheering for Freddy. Like I'd have like a Freddy shirt on because I loved Freddy. And it wasn't because I loved real violence. It was because like I'm watching this movie as a kind of release or something. And Freddy was scary. And I liked that my mom was scared of Freddy. So I liked Freddy. And so I think that horror movies can, to people who don't maybe love horror movies or watch movies or totally get it, feel like we're somehow glorifying real violence by showing pretend violence in very like surreal ways. And I think what we're actually doing is finding ways to cope with the fact that violence exists in the world and being more I don't know.
Well, I think what you're saying is that I think what you're saying is that we want to try to connect with the people that we don't know how to connect with because they're so different. Like that type of character, there's no one is like him, but we can think he's cool, and we're like, yeah. I mean, even like a Superman or a Spider-Man, no one is literally like them. But we want to try to connect with them. So in a movie like a Brightburn, you're going to need a different perspective so that we can at least relate to someone and with that experience by way of that person experiencing this. So you're still kind of rooting for the bad guy, so to speak, but then you're seeing it through the perspective of someone we can actually relate to.
Well, this is what I'd say, right? Like the movie Brightburn certainly makes a moral judgment that the behavior of Brandon is bad. He is the bad guy. of the movie. He's the villain of the movie. So the movie is not glorifying, while it is a violent movie, it's not glorifying violence. It's saying this is the wrong thing. We're rooting for Tori. We hope she wins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are movies that and shows that where they're calling into question the morality, but the morality in Brightburn is quite clear. Like, killing is not okay in the world of Brightburn. What Brandon's doing is certainly bad.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, look at Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is a perfect example of a show that that you could say the morality is a bit more gray, because they pose this like moral choice for you. Like, he's going to die. He can raise money for his kid if he starts going down this dark path, and it sort of asks questions in a way about the morality of what he's doing. And I don't think we're ambiguous about that. Like, Brandon's bad. He's evil. He's an evil superhero.
Yeah. But it's also raising the question, would I be like that if I had those powers? So there is still a relatability situation there.
What happens if you give a 13-year-old boy the power to melt someone's face if he gets angry? It won't go well.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Felicity, did you want to add to that? She just, yeah,
I disagree. I feel like 13-year-old boys shouldn't be allowed much, to be honest. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, but what's funny is that we've all, as a kid, we all grew up on the fairy tale of like Santa Claus or something, right? And as you get a little older, you start to grow up on the fairy tale of like all these superheroes that get handed out all these powers, and the second they get them, they only use them with great responsibility and never misuse them at all. And
right.
so while that's great, I just don't believe that that's in the heart of every human, unfortunately.
Right.
Or
right.
Every person, maybe non-human,
yeah.
But you know what I'm saying.
All right, a couple more questions here. So this is from Roshni. I hope I'm saying the name right. I'm a horror writer-director. Currently, I'm making 1-minute shorts for Instagram. I love that, and other social media. Some more for festivals. I'd love to know, what is one advice you would give me that you wish you got when you were starting out?
Say yes to everything.
Say yes to everything.
Say yes to everything. Let go of the fear that someone's going to steal your idea. Let go of the fear that you're going to like look stupid for doing this or that, or you don't want to work with this person or whatever. Say yes to everything, and anything you say yes to, kill yourself for it. And not literally, but I mean like work as hard as you can for it. The unspoken reality in this town is that there's plenty of people that say yes to things, and then they say yes, and then you're not being paid, or it's a low paying job, and so they kind of like don't really do that. They don't commit to it in a way that they would, or at least they claim they would if there was more money, and they kind of everything's a little late and everything has an excuse. No excuses. Never give a caveat. Just work as hard as you can on everything you do to make it the absolute best you possibly can. That is my real advice. And listen, you can be honest. Hey, this didn't work, or this worked. I made things that didn't work. That's fine. But just keep making stuff and work. Like, just work as hard as you fucking can at it.
Love it. I love it.
I love that. I worked for a very long time as a PA, going from movie to movie, show to show. And I always had the philosophy that every job I was on was my interview for the next job, because you never know who's going to be that person that gives you the next job.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
I'll third that notion, because I think it's, in the projects that I worked on back in Chicago, and Molly was there with us, we would, even though if we were producing or I wrote something and then was directing it, I would be the last one off set if I had to sweep, right? I would do whatever it took just to be a participant and help, and to be as active as I could be. And that showed something to all the people who were also working on the project, that we were fully committed to it. But then you also learn so much by connecting with the different people who are on set and finding out about their jobs, and it informs your writing as a writer too, because the more you learn, even acting in projects, all aspects of what you can do as to be involved, from shooting on your iPhone all the way to editing to being an actor in a project. just helps you as a writer.
Yes.
Yeah.
I 100%
Yeah.
agree.
Let's see now. I got another one here on a different set of questions. What did you learn about writing from shooting the movie? Any movie?
Oh my God. What did I learn about writing? Well, I
This
mean,
is from Michael Esser, by the way. I just want to call Michael out.
all right, Michael. Let me tell. Oh, there goes my wife back there. You're not in the frame anymore. You're okay. You're okay. What did I learn about writing? Okay, well, look, man, I spent a year I spent 6 months developing the script with James and Brian and Mark, right? So, like, I couldn't possibly spend one evening and tell you all the things that I learned, but I will say this. From them, I saw I started to understand the way their mind works. You know, I came into it trying to download as much of James's brain as I possibly could, you know, because he just knows this stuff on another level, you know, and you know, I think that it's so much about having a conversation about, like, you know, that movies are conversations about things. They're a persuasive essay. They are a love letter to something. So if you don't know what that is, you're fucked. You know, can I curse on this?
Sure, why not?
Okay, sorry for cursing, or not sorry. But like, you know, that's number one. Number two, what a character arc is. I so often read in scripts, character arc. You get to, oh, okay, so you meet them and they, I don't know, whatever, are afraid to do this, and then you get to the end of the movie and then they learn to do that. But that isn't a character arc. That's just 2 points on a spectrum. And then what happens is there's this great ocean of nothing, no change, no dynamic from page 10 to page 80, you know? And so it's like, you know, it's a conversation, there's a back and forth, there's a constant relationship between the things that are happening and it challenging who the person is. And so making sure that your story is doing that. Yeah. And then it's also about thinking about the movie as sequences and not scenes. I really got a really good understanding about that.
That's huge, and that was kind of how I learned the screenwriting process. And there are a lot of different consultants that touch on that. Chris Soth calls it the mini movie method. I teach a 12 sequence approach for features, 12 beat approach for, you know, TV series from a 1 hour pilot perspective, even for sitcoms. Seeing things from a bird's eye view and then getting down to the details and being able to come back out. That's what these people like James Gunn, Ron Howard, these pros, they are able to do that all at once. They're able to see everything and connect everything. And that only comes from experience. James was not born with that.
No, he wasn't.
Born smart.
Throughout his career, he's gotten better and better and better.
Right.
He's gotten more and more and more along the way. And that's true of, like, I mean, that's the way it is, you know? I mean, you know, what he's incredibly good at is taking a whole bunch of scenes, you know, and it's like, this sequence is about this. It's about, you know, Brandon being persuaded by the pod, you know? Okay, so this is a sequence about Brandon being persuaded by the pod. That's what this chunk of the movie is, a whole sequence of scenes. And if you don't think about your movie in that way, then you have chaos, you know? No one will be able to follow the emotional ebb and flow of your story.
Right. Yeah. I think we have, because it's getting late in certain places, like on the East Coast, we have room for I think one more question. Sorry, everybody. I know I see a bunch of questions here, and I think it's just
where do I get this? How can I see the questions?
So there's a little Q&A box that says a Q on the bottom of your screen. I am going to ask this
one. You want
one.
to do like a speed round?
It was we could do a little bit of a speed round, yeah. I mean,
because I just talk and.
All right, well then, how about this? The name is A. Gowan 6373 at the bottom, near the bottom. David, I'm in school for screenwriting. Should I wait till I graduate to start sending my screenplays out, or go ahead and start sending them out to contests, agents, etc.? Yeah, it's a tricky question.
It's not that tricky. No one cares how old you are. write a good script. Someone will want to buy it.
Right. Yeah. Once the script is nailed, then go for it. I mean, that's the tricky part. You don't want to just send your first draft out.
Oh yeah, no. You better make sure that's good, because not only, yes, that's true. But what I'm saying is, don't wait now.
Right.
Yeah.
Simon Kinberg is a famous screenwriter. He's written so many things from Mr. and Mrs. Smith and on. Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a graduate project, meaning he was still in grad school and maybe even just regular undergrad when he wrote Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and he sold that and this was during the time of $1 million spec sales for a ridiculous amount of money.
The good old days.
I wish we had that now. All right, Christopher Kramer kind of takes a question out of my book I ask on my podcast. What's the worst advice you have ever received, specifically when breaking in?
Ooh. What is the worst advice?
Or do you remember something that, like, somebody said, do this, and you did it, and you realize, oh my God, that was a horrible idea.
That's a horrible idea. I mean, I think, you know, there was a time in my life where, you know, I was trying to get this movie made, and I was around a bunch of actors, and the actors would like go out to Hollywood clubs, and we'd be like, hey, let's go out and let's talk about the movie. Like, no business ever gets done at a club where there's music. And by the way, this was an incredibly long time ago. Like, there's work and then there's not work. And it was frustrating because I'd go, because I'm not like a party guy, right? So I'd go and I'd be like, okay, let's talk to these people. And I'm like there to work, and you can't even hear each other, you know? So I would say I would stick a needle in the balloon of like go to clubs and meet people and try to schmooze your way like that. At least for writers, directors, that is not the way. The way is to write and to write and to form genuine relationships with people around you, to be a good friend and a good person to the people around you, because everyone you will know in your circle we're all trying to get somewhere together, right? And so being supportive and being, you know, and so anything that goes against that, anything that lives in the world of like reality television schmoozing shit is I would just cut that out.
It's great.
I agree.
Really depends.
I think the big thing is like being a good person and finding your people who you actually gel with and creating real relationships. And that's where and do the work. And then you're gonna get somewhere.
Yes. I mean, look at this.
Don't fake it, and don't use people, and don't be a user, and don't be a climber, and just be somebody who's authentic, and find the people who like the same stuff you like, and go do stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's another little comment here from Nick Hill, Nikhil.
Yes.
You kind of answered this already, but are you working on your narrative directing chops when you're not making a feature? What are you doing when you're not working?
Every day. I right now, I'm constantly developing projects, concepts. The thing that you will come to learn as you work more, and this is going to sound really hard for everyone who isn't like constantly working, is most of your ideas will die a fiery death, and they'll be great ideas. You could I could literally wallpaper my walls with treatments and scripts that I have written, that I love, that will never get made or be seen or anything. And that's true of everyone, man. I heard Guillermo del Toro spent a little ton of time developing a Lovecraft, the Mountains of Madness movie that was going to be with like Tom Cruise. It was going to be like a $200 million movie. So there's so much dev and development time and work that went into that, and it's dead. It's never going to get made. And so the process of making these things, and that's why I always say, don't be so precious with your ideas, because the process isn't, I've got this great idea, it's going to make me money. The process is you're always doing it. You're always generating ideas and content and growing things and turning things into something you like. And then one goes and you actually get to make it. And then everything else dies. and then you do it again. And you keep doing it.
You know, I think that's a good segue out. You know, sorry for some of the folks we didn't get to the Q&A, but I think it's a nice way to end it because it's a great question. You know, Brex is asking, you know, or I'm sorry, not Brex, Nick Hill, what are you doing when you're not working? Technically speaking, the industry is not working right now. Like literally everybody's not working. So what do? You can't just sit back on your hind legs and be like, well, I'll just wait till it picks up again. The top of the top, the people who are dedicated to this are not doing that. They're picking up their game. They're figuring out ways to improve in every level, in every facet of their career as much as they can. And right now, screenwriters need to be spending this time because it could be upwards to 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 months. We don't know how long this is going to be. I just, as I'm sitting here, received an issue of stay at home for the city of Los Angeles. So this could be a while. So what do you do at that time? And educate yourself.
The belief that this town is not working is not true. I mean, I can say that from literal experience. I pitched something to a studio yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, this town is working, okay? Because there's one of two realities that we face, okay? Reality one is that at a certain point in time, things are going, we're not going to just be locked in our house forever, right? At a certain point, we're going to emerge and things will return to some sense of normalcy, right? That's option A. Option B is it never will, and we are now in Mad Maxville, okay? So hopefully it's not that, right? Hopefully, but if it is, let's all form a gang. I have a lot of leather, and I
can find a semi out here somewhere. We'll get it.
Yeah, I have a pink bat with spikes driven through it that we could get real bloody. But for real, like, it's A or it's B, and I'd bet on A. You know what I mean? And so like, listen, take care of yourself through this time. And I'm not just talking to you guys, I'm talking to myself, but take care of yourself during this time. Like, there is a mental health component to this that no one's talking about yet, but there's a lot of people in our lives that are trapped, that we know of, that are trapped in houses by themselves or apartments by themselves. Check in on them, you know, but beyond that, know that at a certain point, this will end and life will return and people will want to watch things.
No, I mean, thank you for correcting me in that vernacular, because when people are working, but it's not production work, they're not actually shooting something right now, but that doesn't mean the town is shut down and there's literally nothing happening. And screenwriters need to be reacting that way too. Just because, really, for screenwriters who have not yet had something produced and they don't have representation, nothing really has changed for you. You should still be developing material. You should still be taking classes. Carissa just put up a little link in the comments there where my book on screenwriting, we're offering it for free in PDF format through a particular link. And Carissa, if you're listening right now, you just put that link up again. It's free. You can, I go through multiple facets from character development to structure to page work and industry stuff. So there are ways to educate yourself. You have to be constantly learning, and YouTube is a ridiculous resource. You can be watching, like even you were saying, David, you watch YouTube all the time.
Yes, so, and look, I mean, think about it this way, right? The film industry, to a degree, was built on the Depression. You know, like in times of great fear and terror and all of those things, the movie business and entertainment thrive because we all need a release and we all need to hear stories to make us feel better. And so do not be discouraged by this. This is actually our time to help. And the way that we can help is by telling stories that connect people.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that it's a nice segue for Craig to mention, we push this as much as we can, but it's because we believe so much in it. There's so many resources on our website, most of which are free. For some of the additional resources, you pay $10 a month. You're part of a whole membership and group. You get a ton of different elements of benefits. And Craig, if you wanted to talk to that.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, we have all the 3 different sections on our site: articles and advice, and pro tips, and the podcast. All that content is there available for you for free. But we have our ISA Connect membership, where we will be looking at log lines and completed content you can submit through our writing gigs page. But go to networkisa.org/ISA Connect, if you want to do the yearly membership, it's $80 for the year. Normally it's $10 a month, which is $120 a year. But if you do the yearly membership, it's only $80 with that code. And hopefully Carissa can dig it out and put it in the Instant Messenger. But there's a lot of great features there because everybody who's on a budget,
Greg, just to, sorry to cut you off, Brian is making it's a good question and good point. Brian's saying in the comments, I have to be honest, I don't like the idea of submitting if I don't know who it is I'm submitting to.
That's unfortunately, we have to protect the industry pros because sometimes when we post who they are, writers go and contact their offices, start calling their offices or following, kind of harassing them on LinkedIn or wherever their social media channels. And these are high level executives. And we ask that you just trust us. We are vetting the content for executives at major companies. And you have to have a little faith in what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's just, and I'm sure a lot of people have considered that question and comment because it's a good comment to make. You should know who you're submitting to, but technically what you're doing is, like Craig is saying, trusting us because this isn't an open forum for people to just, here's a job post, we vet Scott, who's on, earlier, he's the one who helps vet these, Sharon vets these, Felicity, I do, everybody's looking at these things and making sure that this is a legitimate gig. And we understand that some people may not be able to pay writers off the bat, but then is it worthwhile for the writers? So we're making sure that the gigs are worthwhile. So try not to worry about that. It's a good comment to make though.
Yes. And so addition to the submitting to gigs, I think that's the misconception about what ISA Connect is all about, is submitting to writing gigs. We've increased the benefits by giving writers 4 free contest entries throughout the year. They get, starting, the next one's May 1st, and then every 3 months, we give away a free contest entry. And then obviously you get exclusive events and discounts. Max does a monthly webinar that's exclusive to Connect members that is all about the craft. So there's a lot of value you get in addition to submitting to gigs, which admittedly, sometimes you're just not always going to fit every gig. Sometimes it's like auditioning. As a producer, I may see a bunch of headshots of people who look like they fit the part, but until they come in and audition, I don't know. I'll connect to it when I connect to it. And that's the same with written material. So your logline might be great, and you may think that the material fits that gig perfectly, but as a producer, as a director, I need to connect with it on the level that I think David was speaking of earlier. And so that's something to really keep in mind. Don't take it personally. It doesn't mean they didn't like your work. It doesn't mean they're dismissing you. There's something that's just not perfect for them, but you keep going, you keep submitting, and you try everything you can. Like David was talking about, participating in every way you can in the industry. And that's how you inevitably break in, make as many friends. That's why this event is happening, so that you're getting to know us. And then we'll set up some a group on Facebook where you can exchange emails and stay connected with other writers. And we'll just keep growing. So you have, if you're living in a small town in whatever city around the world, or a small town in whatever country around the world, you'll be able to connect in some sort of way. So,
yeah. No, I think this is all good stuff to review because we get those questions a lot because a lot of people just think Connect membership is just writing gigs, but there's a lot more to it. And once you sign up, you can search and look through all the features. But we want to just say thank you again to David. David, it's 7:30 in Los Angeles. I'm sure you have a full night ahead of you of researching YouTube videos and writing.
Yeah, so many places to go. And
yeah. But thank you for doing this. And of course, Shana, thank you for grabbing David. And hopefully if you want to do this again in the future, and we'd love to have you.
Please reach out. I'd love to do it again. This is a lot of fun, and it's nice to just talk about this and not just, saying, oh my God, over and over again.
Thanks so much, David. It really was wonderful to have you on. I really appreciate it.
It was great, guys. Thanks for all of it.
Thanks, David. Real quick, we want to just one little plug. The Hive is on Amazon Prime if anyone wants to watch it.
Yeah.
It's like they said, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
So go watch it, everybody.
Yeah, the Hive and Brightburn's also, it's on everything.
Beautiful. We are going to be trying to launch a 30-day challenge again. We're going to be upgrading the craft course. We're going to be putting all those ISA Connect member webinars onto the craft course. We're just trying to just make this as robust as possible. You should all be trying to take some form of a level of education into this process of our new normal. Hopefully that new normal doesn't last very long. Most importantly, we got to stay positive, stay healthy. Try not to watch so much news, even though it is, of course, important to be, kept up to speed. You have to do that. But, we're not going anywhere in terms of the ISA, in terms of the work that we're trying to do, all the writing we're doing individually, all the creative work. We're going to try to use this time to develop as much material as possible. I made the decision to release my next fiction book. I'm going to just do it. I don't know when exactly it's going to happen, but within the next month and a half, I'm going to try to get that out. You just got to take chances during this time and just see what happens.